The alarm bells rang through the ship like angry thunder. Lieutenant Commander Ji-won Kim jumped from his bunk and ran toward the bridge. His bare feet slapped against the cold metal floor of the exploration vessel Harmony.
Ow.
Members rushed through narrow corridors with worried faces. Something big was happening. Guan had been dreaming of home again. In his dream, he walked through the busy streets of Seoul where he grew up. The smell of street food filled the air. People laughed and talked in Korean. But that peaceful dream was gone now. He was back in the cold reality of deep space. The bridge doors opened with a soft hiss. Captain Torres stood at the center of the room. Her face was pale and serious. All around her, officers stared at their screens with wide eyes. The main display showed something that made Jawan's heart skip a beat. A massive alien warship floated in space before them. It was 10 times bigger than the Harmony, dark metal. The surface was covered with strange symbols that glowed with purple light. Weapons that could destroy entire cities pointed in their direction. "Sir, what is happening?" Guan asked. Captain Torres turned to him. Her voice was quiet but firm. "We just received a message. It came directly from that ship. The message is for you, Commander Kim." Gi-won felt confused. "For me? But I don't know any aliens." "The message says it comes from Empress Nala of the Vexstar Empire. She wants to speak with you personally." The name hit Ji-won like a punch to the stomach. Everyone in the Terran Defense Force knew about the Vexstar Empire. They controlled hundreds of star systems. Their warriors were famous across the galaxy for being unbeatable in battle. They stood 8 feet tall and had 4 arms. Their skin was like natural armor. "Why would she want to talk to me?" Guan asked Dot before Captain Torres could answer. The main screen changed. The image of the alien ship disappeared. In its place, a figure appeared that made everyone on the bridge step backward. Empress Nala was even more frightening than the story said. She was massive, with dark chitinous skin that looked like it could stop bullets. Her forearms moved with deadly grace. 2 large eyes stared out from her face with cold intelligence. When she spoke, her voice was deep and powerful. "Human called Ji-won Kim," she said. "I have heard interesting stories about your species. Your people claim to be great warriors. They say humans are smart and brave. They say you can fight better than any other species in the galaxy." Ji-won felt his mouth go dry. He had never made such claims. But he knew other humans had been talking big when they met alien species. It was human nature to act tough when facing the unknown, the Empress continued. "I do not believe these stories. Humans are small and weak. You have no natural weapons. Your skin is soft. Your bones break easily. How can such creatures be warriors?" Captain Torres stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we did not mean to offend you with our words." The alien Empress ignored her. Her eyes stayed fixed on Ji-won. "I have decided to test these claims. One human will come to my world. This human will face my greatest warriors in combat. If your species is truly as strong as you say, this human will survive. If not, humanity will serve the Vexstar Empire forever." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. If Ji-won failed, all of humanity would become slaves to the alien empire, but if he succeeded, humans would earn respect among the stars. "The human who accepts this challenge will face 3 trials," the Empress said. "First, single combat against my champions. Second, tactical warfare leading my soldiers. Third, a test of my own choosing. Success means humanity joins the Galactic Council as equals. Failure means your species serves mine until the end of time." Ji-won felt the weight of every eye on the bridge. This was not just about him anymore. This was about every human who had ever lived. His parents back on Earth, his younger sister who wanted to become a pilot, his friends from the military academy. All of them would pay the price if he failed. But someone had to do it. Someone had to stand up for humanity. "I accept," Ji-won said, Captain. Captain Torres grabbed his arm. "Commander, you don't have to do this. You can find another way." Ji-won shook his head. "No, Captain. It's my choice. I won't let our entire species become slaves. because I was too scared to fight. The Empress seemed pleased by his answer. Good, you show courage, little human. That is the first requirement of a warrior. You will be transported to my ship immediately. From there, we will travel to my homeworld. The screen went dark. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Captain Torres began giving orders to prepare for Giwan's. DEPARTURE, Dr. Sarah Chen, the ship's medical officer, ran scans on G1 to make sure he was healthy. Engineer Mike Santos checked his equipment and weapons. Communications officer Lisa Park sent messages to Earth Command explaining what was happening. But G1 barely noticed any of this. His mind was focused on what lay ahead. He thought about his training in the military academy. He remembered the years he spent learning to fight on the streets of Seoul before joining the army. Those skills had saved his life many times. Now they might save all of humanity. An hour later, a bright light filled the bridge. When it faded, two alien figures stood before them. They were smaller than the Empress, but still much bigger than any human. Their forearms held advanced weapons. Their faces showed no emotion. Gi-wan Kim, one of them said in broken English. Come. Gi-wan looked around the bridge one last time. These might be the last humans he ever saw. Captain Torres gave him a small salute. The other officers nodded with respect and fear in their eyes. Take care of yourselves, Gi-wan said. I'll be back. He walked toward the aliens. The bright light surrounded him again. When it cleared, he was standing on an alien ship. The walls were made of the same dark metal he had seen from outside. Strange symbols glowed everywhere. The air smelled different, like metal and electricity. One of the aliens gestured for him to follow. They walked through corridors filled with Vexstar warriors. Each one was bigger and more frightening than the last. They stared at Gi-wan with curiosity and contempt. To them, he was just a small, weak creature who would soon be dead. But Gi-wan had faced worse odds before. Growing up poor in Seoul had taught him how to survive when everyone was against him. The military had taught him how to fight and lead. Now he would use everything he had learned to prove that humans deserved their place among the stars. The real test was about to begin. The journey to the Vexstar homeworld took 3 days. Gi-wan spent the time in a small metal room with no windows. The walls were covered with the same glowing symbols he had seen before. A single bed, a water dispenser, and a food machine were his only companions. The food tasted like cardboard mixed with metal, but Gi-wan ate every bite. He needed his strength for what was coming. He did push-ups and practiced his fighting moves in the tiny space. His muscles had to stay ready. On the 3rd day, the ship shuddered and stopped. Through the small air vent, Gi-wan could hear alien voices speaking in their harsh language. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridors outside his room. The door opened. With a loud hiss, a Vexstar warrior stood in the doorway. This one was different from the others. He wore a uniform with golden stripes. His forearms carried no weapons, but Gi-wan could see scars covering his dark skin. Human, the warrior said in broken English. I am Commander Veltok. You come now. Gi-wan followed him through the ship. They passed many other Vexstar warriors, who stopped their work to stare at the small human. Some pointed at him and made sounds that might have been laughter. Others just watched with cold, calculating eyes. They reached a large window that showed the view outside. Gi-wan stopped and stared in amazement. The Vexstar homeworld stretched out below them. Massive cities covered the surface like metal spiders. Tall buildings reached toward the sky like claws. Everything was dark and sharp and dangerous looking. Welcome to Nexelter, Commander Veltok said. Your new home, or your grave. The ship landed with a heavy thud. More alien warriors came to escort Gi-wan off the ship. The air outside was thick and hot. It smelled like burning metal and something else he could not identify. 2 suns hung in the sky, casting everything in a red and orange light. A ground vehicle waited for them. It looked like a tank, but moved on 6 legs instead of wheels. Gi-wan climbed inside and sat between 2 guards. The vehicle walked through the city streets with mechanical precision. Everywhere Gi-wan looked, he saw signs of a warrior culture. Statues of Vexstar fighters covered in battle scars stood on every corner. Buildings were designed like fortresses, with thick walls and narrow windows. Even the civilian aliens he saw walking the streets carried weapons. The vehicle stopped in front of the largest building G1 had ever seen. It was shaped like a giant pyramid, but made of black metal. Spikes jutted out from its sides. At the top, a massive symbol glowed with purple fire. The Imperial Palace, Commander Veltok explained, where you will meet your destiny. Inside the palace, the corridors were even bigger than on the ship. The ceilings stretched up into darkness. Pillars thick as tree trunks supported the weight. Above, every surface was covered with carvings, showing Vexstar warriors in battle. They walked for what felt like hours. Finally, they reached a set of doors that were 3 times taller than G1. The doors opened to reveal a massive throne room. At the far end, Empress Nala sat on a throne made from the bones of some giant creature. But G1 was not alone. Humans stood near the throne. One was a woman in a military uniform with captain's stripes. The other was a man in civilian clothes carrying a data tablet. "Commander Kim," the woman said as he approached. "I am Captain Minji Park, Human Diplomatic Liaison. This is Dr. Hyunwoo Lee, our xenobiologist specialist." Juan felt relief flood through him. He was not completely alone in this alien world. After all, Dr. Lee stepped forward and spoke in a quiet voice. "We have been studying the Vexstar for months, preparing for this moment. I can give you information about their fighting techniques and biological weaknesses." Captain Park nodded. "And I can help you understand their culture and what they expect from you." Empress Nala spoke from her throne. Her voice echoed through the vast room. "So, the small human has arrived? Are you ready to prove your species worthy of respect?" Juan walked closer to the throne. Even sitting down, the Empress was taller than him. Her forearms rested on the armrests of her throne. Her eyes studied him like a predator examining prey. "I am ready," Juan said. The Empress made a sound that might have been approval. "Good. Let me explain your trials. First, you will face single combat against my champion, War Leader Gregdal. He has won 50 battles and never known defeat. If you survive, you move to the second trial." She pointed to a side door with one of her arms. "Second trial will test your ability to lead warriors in battle. You will command a unit of my soldiers against multiple enemies. If you succeed, you face the final trial." "What is the final trial?" Juan asked. The Empress smiled, showing teeth like black daggers. "That is my surprise. But first, you must survive the first 2 trials. Many warriors have tried. All have failed." Commander Veltok stepped forward. "The first trial begins tomorrow at sunrise. Tonight, you rest and prepare. Your human companions will help you understand what you face." Giwan was taken to a larger room than the one on the ship. It had a real bed, a table, and chairs. Captain Park and Dr. Lee joined him there. "Tell me about this Greitel," Giwan said. Dr. Lee opened his tablet and showed images of a massive Vexstar warrior. He is larger than average, even for their species. He's 9 feet tall, 400 pounds of muscle, and natural armor. His 4 arms can wield weapons independently. He prefers plasma blades for close combat. Captain Park added more information. He fights with honor, but no mercy. Vexstar culture values strength above all else. They see mercy as weakness. "What are his weaknesses?" Juan asked. Dr. Lee thought for a moment. "Vexstar are stronger and faster than humans, but they rely on proven fighting techniques. They do not adapt well to unexpected tactics. Their honor code also limits their fighting style. Their joints are slightly less flexible than human joints," Captain Park said. "And they have blind spots because of how their eyes are positioned." Studied the images and information. Greitel looked like he could tear a human apart with his bare hands. But every fighter had weaknesses. Guan had learned that growing up on the streets of Seoul, the biggest, strongest bullies always thought they were unbeatable. That confidence often became their downfall.
"What weapons will I have?" he asked.
"Plasma blade."
The same as your opponent, Dr. Lee said.
"The fight will be in the Grand Coliseum before thousands of Vexstar spectators. It is a fight to surrender or death." Guan nodded. He had expected as much. "How long do I have to prepare?" 8 hours until sunrise," Captain Park said. "Suggest you rest, Tomorrow will test everything you have learned about fighting and surviving. As his companions left him alone, Jiwan sat on the bed and thought about home. He remembered his first real fight on the streets of Seoul. He had been 12 years old, facing 3 older boys who wanted to steal his school money. He had been scared, but fought anyway. He won that day by being smarter, not stronger. Tomorrow, he would need every trick he had ever learned. The fate of humanity depended on it. Outside his window, the twin suns of the alien world set behind the dark buildings of Next Altar. Soon he would face a warrior who had never known defeat, but Jiwon Kim had never backed down from a fight in his life. He was not about to start now. The morning suns cast long shadows across the Grand Colosseum. Giwon stood in the center of the arena, looking up at thousands of Vexstar spectators. Their voices created a rumbling sound like distant thunder. Most of them were betting on how quickly Greichtel would kill the small human. The arena floor was made of smooth black stone. It stretched out in a perfect circle, 200 feet across. No weapons lay scattered around. No places to hide. Just empty space where one warrior would live and another would die. Empress Nala sat in the royal box high above the arena. Her 4 arms rested on the stone railing as she watched. Captain Park and Dr. Lee sat nearby, their faces tight with worry. A gate opened on the opposite side of the arena. War leader Greichtel walked out to face his opponent. The crowd roared with approval. He was even bigger than the pictures had shown. His forearms moved with deadly grace. Scars covered his dark skin like a roadmap of past victories. In each of his 4 hands, he held a plasma blade. The weapons hummed with energy. They could cut through steel like butter. They could slice a human in half without slowing down. G1 held his single plasma blade with both hands. It felt heavy and unfamiliar. He had trained with similar weapons, but never in a fight to the death. Little human Greichtel called out in his deep voice. You should have stayed on your small world. Now you will die far from home. The crowd laughed and cheered. They expected this to be over quickly. Small human against their greatest champion seemed like an easy victory. But Jiwon remembered the lessons from his youth. Size and strength were not everything. Speed and intelligence could win battles that muscle could not. A horn sounded to begin the fight. Greichtel charged forward with all 4 blades spinning. He moved faster than something so large should be able to move. His weapons created a deadly whirlwind of plasma energy. G1 rolled to the side, just as the blades cut through the air where his head had been. Came up running, keeping his distance from the larger warrior. The crowd booed. They wanted to see blood, not running. Greichtel turned and attacked again. This time, G1 was ready. Instead of backing away, he stepped forward and inside the reach of the 4 blades. His own weapon caught one of Greichtel's blades and pushed it aside. The Vexstar warrior stumbled slightly. He was not used to opponents who moved closer instead. Farther away, his 4-blade technique worked best against enemies who tried to escape. Giwan pressed his advantage. He stayed close to Greichtel's body, where the long weapons were harder to use. Struck quick, short blows at the joints where the alien's natural armor was weakest. But Greichtel was a champion for good reasons. He adapted quickly to the human's strange fighting style. He grabbed Giwan with one of his free hands and threw him across the arena. Giwan hit the stone floor hard and rolled. K shot through his ribs. He could taste blood in his mouth. He forced himself to stand. Giving up was not an option. The 2 fighters circled each other. Both were breathing hard now. Greichtel's confidence was shaken. This human was not fighting like other species he had faced. There were no rules or patterns. To follow, you fight like a coward, Greichtel said. Stand still and face me with honor. Giwan spat blood onto the arena floor. Honor will not save my people. Victory will. This time when Greichtel charged, Giwan did something completely unexpected. He threw his plasma blade like a spear. The weapon spun through the air and struck one of Greichtel's weapons, knocking it from his hand. Now the alien champion had only 3 blades. The odds were still against Juan, but they were better than before. Juan dove and rolled, picking up the fallen blade. Now, he had a weapon in each hand. The crowd grew quiet. This was not how these fights usually went. The battle became faster and more desperate. Both warriors were tired and bleeding. Greitel's natural armor had saved him from serious wounds, but small cuts covered his arms and legs. Jiwan had larger injuries but ignored the pain. Then Jiwan saw his chance. Greitel raised all 3 remaining blades for a killing blow. For just a moment, his chest was unprotected. Guan threw himself forward, both weapons aimed at the alien's heart. Greitel's blades came down, but too late. Guan's plasma weapons pierced through the gap in his armor as the great champion fell to his knees, then forward onto the arena floor. The Colosseum fell, completely silent. No one could believe what they had seen. A small human had defeated their greatest warrior. Empress Nala stood up in her royal box. Her voice carried across the arena. The human has won the first trial. He has earned the right to continue. Crowd erupted in confused noise. Some cheered for the unexpected victory. Others were angry that their champion had fallen. But all of them now looked at Jiwan with new respect. Dr. Li and Captain Park rushed down to the arena floor. They helped. Jiwan stand and checked his wounds. Nothing was life-threatening, but he needed medical attention. "How did you do it?" Captain Park asked as they walked toward the exit. Jiwan winced as his ribs moved. Stopped fighting his fight and made him fight mine. He expected me to follow rules. But sometimes, survival means breaking the rules. As they left the arena, Guan could hear the crowd still talking about the battle. Word would spread quickly through the Vexstar Empire. The small human had done something impossible, but this was only the first trial. 2 more challenges waited ahead, and Empress Nala would not underestimate him again. In her royal box, the Empress watched the human being helped away. For the first time in years, she was genuinely interested in what would happen next. Perhaps these humans were more than they appeared to be. Perhaps the stories about their fighting ability were not just empty boasting after all. The second trial would test the human's mind as well as his fighting skills. If he survived that, the final trial would determine the fate of his entire species. But that was tomorrow's challenge. Today, against all odds, the human warrior still lived, and sometimes that was victory enough. 2 days passed while Jiwan recovered from his battle with Greitel. The medical machines in his room worked constantly to heal his wounds. His ribs still ached, but the deep cuts had closed. Purple bruises covered his arms and chest like war. Paint Dr. Li visited every few hours to check on his progress. "The entire Vexstar Empire is talking about your victory," he said during one visit. "Some are calling it luck. Others say you cheated by not following proper combat rules."
Ow.
Sat up in his bed carefully. "What do you think?" "I think you fought smart instead of proud," Dr. Li replied. "That is why you are alive and Greitel's is not." Captain Park brought news from the palace. "Empress Nala has changed the second trial. Originally you were supposed to lead 10 soldiers against 20 enemies. Now she wants you to command 50 soldiers against 200. Jiwan felt his stomach tighten. "She is making it harder because I won the first trial." "Yes, she wants to see if your victory was really skill or just good." Fortune Captain Park sat down in the chair beside his bed. "There is something else. The soldiers you will command are not volunteers. They are being ordered to follow a human. Many of them are not happy about it. This was worse news. Leading soldiers who did not trust you was harder than fighting any single enemy." Guan had learned this lesson during his military training on Earth. On the morning of the second trial, Guan was taken to a different part of the palace. This area looked like a military command center. Screens covered the walls, showing maps of alien worlds. Officers moved between control stations. Monitoring battles across the Empire, Empress Nala waited for him in the center of the room. She wore armor instead of royal robes today. Her forearms held different weapons, showing that she was a warrior as well as a ruler. "Today you face a different kind of test," she said. "Anyone can swing a sword in single combat, but true warriors must be able to lead others into battle. Can you command soldiers who do not respect you?" She gestured to a large screen that showed a holographic battlefield. "This is not a game or simulation. Technology makes everything real except death. Pain, fear, exhaustion, All of these you will feel. Your soldiers will feel them too. The battlefield looked like a nightmare. Rocky hills covered with twisted metal structures, deep ravines cut through the landscape like scars. Smoke drifted across everything, making it hard to see more than a few hundred feet in any direction. Your enemy is a mercenary army of Kethran raiders, the Empress continued. They are savage fighters who show no mercy. They know this terrain well and have dieselless, superior numbers. Your mission is to drive them from the high ground in the center of the battlefield. 50 Vexstar soldiers marched into the command center. They wore full battle armor and carried plasma rifles. Each one was bigger and stronger than 10 humans, but their faces showed doubt and anger when they saw Juan. The soldier in front stepped forward. He was older than the others, with more scars and medals on his armor. I am Sergeant Velmer. These warriors have fought across the galaxy. Why should we follow a small human into battle? Giwan looked at each soldier carefully. He could see the question in their eyes. Some were curious about him after hearing of his victory over Greichtel. Others were clearly angry about being forced to serve under an alien. Because I am not asking you to die for me, Juwan said. I am asking you to fight with me. There is a difference. Sergeant Velmer made a sound that might have been laughter. Pretty words, but words do not win battles. You were right, Juwan. Agreed. Actions win battles. Follow me and judge my actions, not my words. The holographic battlefield activated around them. Suddenly, they were standing on real ground under a red sky. The smell of smoke and metal filled the air. In the distance, they could hear weapon fire and the shouts of enemy soldiers. Guan studied the terrain through his tactical viewer. The enemy held the high ground, just as the Empress had said. 200 Kethran raiders with heavy weapons and strong positions. A direct assault would result in massive casualties. Sergeant Velmer Juwan called out, "What would your normal battle plan be?" The alien sergeant pointed toward the enemy positions. Frontal assault. Overwhelm them with superior firepower and courage. How many of your soldiers would die? Velmer hesitated. Perhaps 20, maybe 30. But we would achieve victory. Juwan shook his head. It's unacceptable. We will use a different approach. He gathered the 50 soldiers around him and explained his plan. Instead of a direct attack, they would split into 3 groups. The first group would create a diversion on the left flank. The second group would circle around to attack from the right side. The third group, led by Giwan himself, would wait for the perfect moment to strike at the enemy command post. This is not how Vexstar warriors fight, one soldier protested. We do not hide and sneak like thieves. Today you fight like humans, Jiwan replied. Today you fight to win with minimum losses. The battle began at dawn. Jiwan's first group opened fire on the enemy left flank, drawing their attention. The Kethran raiders responded exactly as expected, moving most of their forces to meet this threat. While the enemy was distracted, the second group moved into position on the right side. They waited for Giwan's signal, hidden among the rocky outcroppings. Giwan led his third group through a deep ravine that provided cover from enemy sensors. The terrain was difficult, but it allowed them to approach the enemy command post unseen. "Oh, I understand," Sergeant Velmer said as they moved through the ravine. Use the enemy's expectations against them. They expect us to charge straight at them, so we do not. Exactly, Juwan replied. The strongest position becomes a weakness if you can attack from an unexpected direction. The plan worked perfectly. When Jiwan's group attacked the command post, the enemy was caught completely off guard. Their communication system was destroyed before they could call for help. Without central command, Kethran raiders began to panic. The second group attacked their right flank while they were confused. Caught between 3 different attacks, the enemy force collapsed in less than an hour. The final count showed complete victory, with only 3 wounded Vexstar soldiers. No deaths. The impossible had been achieved. As the holographic battlefield faded away, the 50 soldiers looked at Jiwan with new eyes. They had seen him risk his own life to save theirs. They had watched him make decisions that preserved their lives while still achieving victory. Sergeant Velmer removed his helmet and bowed his head. "I was wrong about you, human commander. You fight with wisdom as well as courage. It would be an honor to serve under your command in real battle. The other soldiers made similar gestures of respect. They had entered the simulation as reluctant followers. They left it as believers. Empress Nala watched everything from the command center. When the trial ended, she approached Giwan with a thoughtful expression. "Impressive," she said. "You have proven that humans can lead as well as fight. Your tactics were unconventional but effective. Most importantly, you valued the lives of soldiers under your command." She paused and studied him carefully. "This is unusual among warrior species. Most commanders are willing to sacrifice soldiers for victory. You found a way to achieve both victory and preserve life." "Every life has value," Giwan said. "Victory means nothing if you lose everything you are trying to protect." The Empress nodded slowly. "Perhaps there is wisdom in this philosophy. You have passed the second trial, human. But the third trial will test more than your fighting skills or tactical knowledge. It will test the very essence of what makes your species unique." As Giwan was escorted back to his quarters, he felt both relief and worry. 2 trials were complete, but the hardest challenge still waited ahead. The final trial would determine not just his fate, but the future of all humanity among the stars. 3 days after the second trial, Empress Nala summoned Giwan to the throne room. This time, the massive chamber was filled with military officers and nobles. Their conversation stopped when the human entered. All eyes followed him as he walked. Toward the throne, Captain Park and Dr. Lee waited near the front of the crowd. Their faces showed worry and excitement at the same time. Whatever was coming next would be bigger than the previous trials. The Empress stood as Giwan approached. Her forearms gestured to the assembled crowd. "Commanders and nobles of the Vexter Empire," she announced. "You have all heard of this human's victories? Some of you still doubt that his success proves anything about his species?" From the crowd, Yuan could hear fragments of conversation in the alien language. Not all of it sounded friendly. "Therefore," the Empress continued, "the final trial will remove all doubt. This human will not face simulation or single combat. He will lead real soldiers in actual battle against our enemies." The crowd fell silent. Real battle meant real death. No second chances or medical revival if things went wrong. The Kithran Raiders have established a base on the mining world of Kepler-4 for 2B, she explained. They are using it to launch attacks against our civilian colonies. 3 attempts to dislodge them have failed. The 4th attempt will be led by this human. Holographic display showed the target planet was a harsh world of red rocks and poisonous atmosphere. The Kethran base sat in a deep canyon surrounded by defensive positions. Getting close enough to attack would be nearly impossible. "You will command the battle cruiser Defiance," the Empress said to Juan. "Your crew will include your human companions and volunteer Vextar warriors. Success means humanity earns full membership in the Galactic Council. Failure means your species becomes servants of the Empire forever." She paused and looked directly at him. "But failure will also mean your death and the deaths of everyone under your command. This is not a game, human. This is war." Juan felt the weight of every stare in the room. Real soldiers would die if he made mistakes. The thought was terrifying and exciting at the same time. "I accept the final trial," he said. 2 hours later, Juan stood on the bridge of the battle. Cruiser Defiance. The ship was smaller than the massive Vextar dreadnoughts, but it was still larger than anything humans had ever built. Weapon systems covered its hull like metal thorns. Captain Park took her position at the communications station. She would coordinate between human and alien crew members during the battle. Dr. Lee worked at the science station, analyzing enemy positions and defenses. The Vextar crew members watched Juan carefully. They had volunteered for this mission, but leading them into real combat was different from commanding holographic simulations. "Commander," the navigation officer called out, "we are approaching the target system." Through the main view screen, Giwan could see Kepler-4 to be growing larger. The planet looked like a red wound against the black of space. Sensor readings showed the Kethran base deep in the canyon, just as the intelligence reports had described. "Enemy ships detected," the tactical officer announced. 12 Raiders vessels guarding the planet. They are moving to intercept us. This was the moment of truth. Everything Jiwan had learned in the previous trials would be tested against real enemies who wanted to kill him and his crew. All crews to battle stations, Jiwan ordered. Prepare for combat. The bridge became a center of controlled activity. Officers checked weapon systems and defensive shields. The ship's engines hummed with power as they prepared for battle. The Kethron ships were fast and aggressive. They attacked in groups, trying to overwhelm the Defiance with superior numbers. Their weapons lit up space with deadly energy beams. But Jiwan had learned from his previous battles. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, he used the same tactics that had worked in the simulation. The Defiance dodged between asteroids and debris, using the environment as cover. Target their lead ship, Jiwan commanded. All weapons concentrated. Fire. The Defiance's weapons spoke with one voice. Plasma cannons and missile launchers sent destruction toward the enemy flagship. The Kethron ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal. The other enemy ships became confused without their leader. They broke formation and attacked individually instead of working together. This made them easier targets for the disciplined fire from the Defiance. Within an hour, all 12 enemy ships were destroyed or fleeing. The space around the planet was clear, but the real challenge still waited on the surface, scanning the end. Enemy base, Dr. Lee reported. They have approximately 500 soldiers and heavy defensive weapons. A direct assault would be suicide. Yuan studied the tactical display. The Kethron base was built in the deepest part of the canyon. High walls and weapon towers protected every approach. Any attacking force would be cut to pieces before reaching the walls. But there was another way. Prepare a ground assault team, Jiwan ordered. 50 soldiers, mixed human and Vexstar. We will use the same tactics that worked in the simulation. Captain Park looked worried. Commander, this is not a simulation. If soldiers die, they stay dead. I know, Jiwan replied. That is why we will not attack where they expect us to attack. The assault team prepared quickly. 25 Vexstar warriors joined 25 human marines who had been training on the ship. The mixed unit had never fought together before. But there was no time for practice. G1 led the team down to the planet's surface in small landing. Craft. The poisonous atmosphere required environmental suits, but the suits were clumsy and limited movement. Fighting in them would be difficult. The landing site was 10 miles from the enemy base, hidden behind a ridge of red rocks. From there, the assault team would have to cross dangerous terrain while avoiding enemy patrols. Remember the plan, G1 told his soldiers. Small groups, different routes converge on the target at the same time. Speed and surprise are our advantages. The team split into 5 groups of 10 soldiers each. They moved across the rocky landscape using different paths toward the enemy base. Guan led one group that included Sergeant Velmer and 3 human marines. The journey took 6 hours. The poisonous air made every breath a struggle, even with the environmental suits. Sharp rocks cut through equipment. The gravity was stronger than Earth normal, making every step exhausting, but they reached the canyon without being detected. Looking down at the enemy base, Jiwan could see why previous attacks had failed. The walls were 20 feet high and covered with weapon emplacements. Guards patrolled constantly. Motion sensors covered every approach except one. There, Dr. Lee whispered over the communication system. The waste disposal tunnels on the north side. They are too small for normal assault troops, but humans might fit. It was a desperate plan. The tunnels were designed for garbage, not soldiers. They would be cramped, dark, and probably filled with toxic waste. But they offered the only way to get inside the base undetected. All teams, new plan, Guan announced. Follow me to the north wall. Getting to the tunnels required crossing open ground under the view of enemy sensors. But Jiwan had an idea. At exactly midnight, his teams created multiple diversions around the canyon. Explosions and weapon fire lit up the darkness. While the enemy was distracted by the false attacks, Jiwan's real assault team crawled through the waste tunnels. The journey was horrible. The tunnels were barely wide enough for a human body. Toxic sludge covered everything. The smell was so bad that several soldiers became sick inside their suits. But the plan worked. They emerged inside the enemy base. Near the main command center, the Kethran raiders were completely surprised to find enemy soldiers appearing in the middle of their stronghold. The battle inside the base was brutal and close. In the narrow corridors, the superior numbers of the enemy meant nothing. Giwan's mixed team fought with desperate courage. Knowing that retreat was impossible, human marines and Vexstar warriors fought side by side, protecting each other and sharing ammunition. The artificial barriers between species disappeared in the face of shared danger. After 2 hours of fighting, the enemy command center fell. Without central coordination, the remaining Kethran raiders surrendered or fled into the desert as dawn broke over the red planet, Ashi. Guan stood in the captured base and looked at his soldiers. 5 humans and 3 Vexstar had died in the battle. Their sacrifice had saved thousands of civilians on other worlds, but the cost was still painful. "We did it," Captain Park said, her voice tired but proud. "The base is ours." Giwan nodded, but he felt no joy in the victory. War was never something to celebrate, even when necessary. The final trial was complete. He had to face Empress Nala and learn the fate of humanity. The journey back to the Vexstar homeworld took 5 days. Giwan spent most of that time in the medical bay recovering from injuries received during the assault on the Kethran base. Plasma burns covered his left arm. His ribs were cracked again, but he was alive, and so were most of his soldiers. The mixed human and Vexstar crew had become a real team during the battle. Species differences seemed less important after they had bled together for a common cause. Human marines shared meals. With Vexstar warriors, they told stories of their homeworlds and learned each other's languages. Captain Park visited Juan daily with reports from Earth. News of his trials had reached home through diplomatic channels. The entire planet was following his progress. Children wore his picture on their school uniforms. Adults gathered in public squares to hear updates about the trials. "No pressure," she said with a small smile. "But about 8 billion people are counting on you." Dr. Lee brought different news. His analysis of the battles showed that cooperation between humans and aliens was not only possible, but beneficial. Each species brought different strengths to combat situations. Combined properly, they were stronger than either could be alone. Its information could change how the galaxy thinks about warfare, he explained. Most species fight only with their own kind. Mixed units are considered too difficult to coordinate. But we proved it works, Jiwan said. Yes, and that makes humans valuable as allies, instead of just another species seeking membership in the Galactic Council. On the 5th day, the Defiance entered orbit around the Vexstar homeworld. Word of their victory had traveled ahead of them. Crowds gathered in the streets of Nexeltor to see the returning warriors. Some cheered for the successful mission. Others came to see the human who had done the impossible. Empress Nala waited in the throne room with her full court in attendance. Nobles, military officers, and diplomats from dozens of species filled the massive chamber. This would not be a private meeting. The entire galaxy would witness humanity's fate. Guan walked slowly toward the throne, still feeling pain from his injuries. Captain Park and Dr. Lee flanked him on either side. Behind them came representatives of the human and Vexstar soldiers who had fought in the final battle. The Empress stood as they approached. Her forearms held ceremonial weapons instead of real ones. Her expression was unreadable, giving no hint of what decision she had reached. "Commander Jiwan Kim of the Terran Defense Force," she announced in a voice that carried throughout the chamber. "You have completed the 3 trials I set before you." The crowd fell silent. Every species representative leaned forward to hear the judgment that would echo across the stars. "In the first trial, you defeated our greatest champion through skill and determination. You proved that humans can fight with courage when facing superior opponents." She paused and looked directly at him. "In the second trial, you led Vexstar warriors to victory while preserving their lives. You proved that humans can command respect through wisdom and tactical thinking." Another pause. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a blade. In the third trial, you led mixed species forces in real combat against our enemies. You proved that humans can unite different peoples for a common cause. Empress Nala raised one of her ceremonial weapons high above her head. These trials have shown me something I did not expect to find. Humans possess qualities that are rare in the galaxy. You fight not just for victory, but for principles. You lead not through fear, but through example. You unite instead of divide. The weapon came down and pointed toward Jiwan. For a moment, he thought she was about to execute him. Then she reversed the weapon and offered him the handle. I, Empress Nala, of the Vexstar Empire, formally recognize humanity as a warrior species worthy of respect and alliance. Your people have earned full membership in the Galactic Council through blood and sacrifice. The throne room erupted in noise. Some species representatives cheered and applauded. Others looked angry or worried about this development. A few seemed calculating, already thinking about how to use this new alliance for their own benefit. But Guan barely heard any of it. Relief flooded through him like cool water after a long drought. Humanity was safe. His species would not become slaves. The trials were finally over. However, the Empress continued, and the room fell quiet again. This victory comes with responsibilities. Humans will now be expected to contribute to galactic security. You will face challenges from species who fear your rapid rise to prominence. The trials you faced here were only the beginning. She stepped down from her throne and approached Jiwan directly. Your people must be prepared for what comes next. Some will welcome humans as allies. Others will see you as threats to be eliminated. The galaxy is not a safe place, even for proven. Warriors Jiwan accepted the ceremonial weapon and bowed his head with respect. We understand, Your Majesty. Humans have always faced challenges. We'll face these new ones together with our allies. The Empress smiled, showing her sharp teeth. Good. Then let us discuss the terms of our alliance. The formal ceremonies took 3 more days. Treaties were signed between humanity and the Vexstar Empire. Trade agreements were negotiated. Military cooperation protocols were established. Captain Park worked 18-hour days handling the diplomatic details. Dr. Lee was invited to establish a permanent research station to study interspecies cooperation. His work would help other mixed military units function more effectively. The knowledge gained from the trials would benefit the entire galaxy. But for Giwan, the most important ceremony was the memorial service for the soldiers who had died in the final battle. 5 humans and 3 Vexstar were honored together. There. Names carved into a monument that would stand forever in the capital city. They died so that billions of others could live free, Guan said during the ceremony. Human or Vexstar, their sacrifice was equal. Their courage was equal. Their memory will be equal. When the ceremonies ended, Jiwan was offered a choice. He could remain in the Vexstar Empire as a military advisor. He could join the Galactic Council as humanity's representative. Or he could return to Earth and resume his normal life. He chose to go home. The transport ship that carried him back to Earth was much larger and more comfortable than the exploration vessel he had left weeks ago. But Jiwan spent most of the journey looking out the window at the stars, thinking about everything that had happened. When the ship entered Earth's solar system, Jiwan felt emotions he could not name. Like the blue and white planet looked exactly the same as when he had left. Was not the same person who had departed. The trials had changed him in ways he was still discovering. Earth Command gave him a hero's welcome. Parades were held in major cities around the world. He received medals and honors from every nation. Politicians and reporters wanted to interview him. Everyone wanted to hear the story of how one man had saved humanity's future. But after a few weeks of celebrations, Giwan asked for a transfer to the military academy. He wanted to train the next generation of human space marines. The skills and knowledge he had gained needed to be passed on to others. Why teaching? Captain Park asked. During one of her visits, she had been promoted to ambassador and was preparing to establish Earth's first embassy in alien space. G1 looked out the window of his new office at the cadets training in the courtyard below. Because what I learned out there was too important to keep to myself. These young soldiers will face challenges we cannot even imagine yet. They need to be ready. He pointed to a group of cadets practicing combat techniques. Look at them. They're learning to fight as individuals. But the galaxy requires warriors who can fight as part of mixed species units. They need to understand that courage and honor are not limited to humans. Dr. Lee's research reports arrived weekly, filled with data about successful cooperation between different species. New alliances were forming across the galaxy. Trade routes were opening that had been closed for centuries. The trials had started changes that would continue for generations. But there were also troubling reports. Some species viewed humanity's rapid acceptance into galactic society with suspicion and fear. Military buildups were detected in several systems. Diplomatic tensions were rising. The Empress was right, Guiwan told his advanced students during a strategy class. The trials were only the beginning. Greater challenges are coming. You must be prepared not just to fight, but to lead. Not just to win, but to unite. One student raised her hand. Sir, what if we are not strong enough?
What?
If we fail, like other species have failed? Guan thought about the question carefully. It was the same doubt he had felt when facing Greichtel in the arena. The same fear he had experienced before leading soldiers into real combat. Failure is always possible, he said finally. But humans have one advantage that has carried us through every challenge we have ever faced. We adapt. We learn. We never give up, even when the odds seem impossible. He looked at each student in turn. The alien Empress issued a trial to test our worth. I cleared the floor and the Warzone. But the real test is not over. It continues every day, in every choice we make, in every challenge we face. Your generation will write the next chapter.